The Bartlett Plan Commission, my wife, for April 14, 2016 at 7:01. Secretary called the roll.
Mark Hopkins. Tim Ridenauer.
Here.
John Miasso.
Here.
Jerry Callis.
Here.
Diane Nagel.
Here.
Jane Cook.
Here.
Austin Hopkins.
Here.
Tom Connor. Jack Allen. Jim Lemberg.
Here.
We have a quorum.
First item on the agenda is the approval of the December 10, 2015 minutes.
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion? No, Secretary call the roll.
Could you give me the second on that? That was Jerry?
Yes.
Who moved?
I did.
Austin? Okay. Kind of what I thought, but
Come on, Secretary.
all right. Austin Hopkins.
Yes.
Jerry Callis.
Yes.
Tim Ridenauer.
Yes.
John Miasso.
Yes.
Diane Nagel.
Yes.
Jane Cook.
Abstain.
And Jim Lemberg.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next item on the agenda is 14-29, Bartlett Ridge. A, amended preliminary plat of subdivision. B, amended preliminary PUD plan. And C, special use permits for an amended PUD plan and wetlands. This is going to be a public hearing. If anyone has comments, questions, there's a little form to fill out, name and address, give it to staff, and we'll call your name at the appropriate time for the public hearing so that you can. Roberta, do we have all the documents? We do. All the public notice, okay. The petitioner here this evening? Okay, could you stand and get sworn in, please? And anyone else that's going to be giving testimony? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge? Thank you. Okay, Roberta.
Okay, sure. The petitioner is requesting approval of an amended preliminary final subdivision, an amended preliminary final PUD plan, and two special uses. The first for the amended PUD and the second for a wetland located within the detention area. The 13.5-acre site is currently vacant and is located along the east side of Naperville Road, approximately 1,200 feet south of Lake Street. The property was rezoned from the SR5 PUD zoning district to the SR4 PUD zoning district back in July of 2015. Previously, the petitioner had proposed a 43-lot single-family subdivision at this location. However, due to the Park District requesting a cash in lieu of a land donation, the developer was able to add two single-family lots here at the end near the cul-de-sac right here. So, which, as a result, amended the application, which is now for a 45 single-family lot subdivision and a total of 49 lots. The minimum lot size of 6,988 square feet would remain the same, while the average lot size has increased slightly from 8,104 square feet to 8,191 square feet. The first special use request is for the amended plan unit development, which would allow for the following modifications from the bulk regulations. Just to note, these modifications remain unchanged from the original preliminary review. So they are requesting a front yard of 20 feet, and along the Sierra Court, which is at North Court, it would be 25 feet for the front yards. Side yards would be 7 feet. Rear yards would be 25 feet, with the exception of 35 feet for those proposed homes closest to the existing townhomes in the Timberline subdivision. The plat of subdivision identifies a 17-foot wide road dedication along the east side of Naperville Road per the request of Cook County Highway. Staff is requesting a 10-foot wide bike path to be located along the east side of Naperville Road in lieu of the required sidewalk. The proposed bike path would connect with the existing paths located both to the north and south of the property. The petitioner would still be requesting two modifications from the subdivision ordinance. One, to reduce the right-of-way width from the required 66 feet to 60 feet for the proposed High Point Court and Sierra Court. And the second would to exceed the maximum cul-de-sac length of 600 feet. The streets would still meet the required minimum pavement width of 28 feet, but a 10-foot wide utility easement would be located within the front yards of each of the lots to allow for the required utilities. The cul-de-sac, as shown on this plat, measures approximately 476 feet. As stated earlier, the Park District opted for a cash in lieu of land and is only requiring a 10-foot wide bike path easement to be located on Lot 49. So you can see this is the detention Lot 49, and here is the bike path easement that they're proposing from the edge of the end of the cul-de-sac down to the adjoining park. The path would be maintained by the Park District and would connect the future Bartlett Ridge residents to the existing park and playground in the Eagles Ridge subdivision to the south. The second special use request is for the mitigation of a wetland. Let's see if I have a picture of that on here. I do. Located here on this map, you can see the circle. It's a half-acre regulatory wetland that has been identified within the detention area at the southeast corner of the site. The petitioner proposes to mitigate this wetland through the purchase of credits at a certified off-site wetland mitigation bank. The petitioner states that the buffer plantings and stormwater management design will exceed current conditions with increased infiltration and habitat area while reducing soil erosion and sedimentation. Our consultants agree, and they are still, however, reviewing the application at this time. I can go back here. The petitioner is requesting, will be installing an 8-foot high board-on-board cedar fence with steel posts along the rear property line of lots 12 through 15 and 18 through 24. So up here, down here, and along here, and then along the east side of lot 24. So here, 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 and here. This fence would help to buffer the future homes from the existing Barrington Motors RV sales and the adjacent restaurant bar that does have an outdoor seating area. Previous submittals and requests by the staff had the existing Telluride Court located within the Timberline subdivision here, extending through this subdivision to connect the property and the street system, and to provide a second point of ingress-egress for not only Timberline, but for this subdivision as well. The petitioner approached the Timberline Homeowners Association, property manager, and president, and was told that they would not be interested in connecting these two properties. The Timberline annexation agreement stated the village would need to request the road dedication to take place within 24 months of the date of the annexation agreement, and the property would need to be rezoned to residential. If the village did not elect to exercise the dedication of the right-of-way within said period, this dedication would expire and be of no further force and effect. And the annexation agreement was dated February of 2001. And since no development proposals were submitted to the village, the property was not rezoned for this, and the 2-year time frame passed, and the window for the village requiring the connection of the two subdivisions passed. So as a result, the staff approached the petitioner with providing an emergency access easement similar to what was in the that exists in the Timberline subdivision, which is actually here and has been utilized within the last year for emergency access, to allow a secondary point of access in the event Naperville Road was blocked. The petitioner contacted the owner of the restaurant bar located to the east of the property and had positive discussions regarding this emergency access. However, since the original preliminary approval and the last time that you saw this proposal, the adjoining property owner has decided to not grant the emergency access easement. Petitioner has identified Lot 48. I know it's hard to see on here, but it's a tiny lot at the end of this cul-de-sac right here. It's just basically a strip of land that is designated as Lot 48 for a future emergency access connection. And the village has requested a depressed curb and a gate at this location. So if at some point in the future the adjoining property owner does consent to allow the access to continue onto the adjoining property, the access would be recorded on the Bartlett Ridge subdivision plat and in place. Okay, the staff reviewed the tree preservation plan and the final civil drawings with regard to saving trees along the south property line and the placement of a storm pipe within close proximity to these preserved trees. The staff had concerns with the lifespan of the remaining trees and the burden this could potentially become for the new homeowners if these trees were to die and then need to be removed within a few years of purchasing their home. The staff contacted the petitioner and they have agreed to remove 8 additional trees. They were the closest trees to the proposed pipe location, and they have agreed to plant 8 new 6-foot-tall evergreen trees in the backyards of the new homes along the south property line, generally filling in the gaps where the trees were removed. The remaining preserved trees will be root pruned prior to construction and to limit the potential for additional root damage and to aid in prolonging their life. As discussed during the original preliminary plan review, an impervious surface statement will be signed by all of the homeowners to ensure they are aware of the maximum impervious surface requirements on their lot, and a noise disclosure statement will be signed by the owners closest to on Sierra Court, lots 12 through 15 and 18 through 24, due to their close proximity to the RV sales and restaurant uses. These will be exhibits attached to the final ordinance, and staff does recommend approval subject to the conditions and the findings of fact outlined in your staff report.
Are there any questions from the members for the staff?
Just a quick question on the emergency access. Now that's all granted and everything like that. That's for with I think was it Moretti's or that owns that property over there.
It's no longer in effect.
Okay, so it's not going to be there.
I'm going to let them go in a little bit more detail about that since
Okay.
they negotiated with that property owner, and they can, the negotiations just fell apart.
Okay.
Question?
I had one. That fence does go along the east side of Lot 24. Is that correct?
The fence does go along the east side of Lot 24. That is
Just want to make sure of that.
Yep.
Okay, if there are no further questions, would the petitioner have any statement added?
Everyone, my name is Mark Iden. I'm the attorney for Ryan. I'm going to keep this brief because I know we have members of the public here who probably want to speak. You've seen this before. I am sure you're aware of that. We had a preliminary approval, but we did have to make a few changes because the on-site park would not be accepted by the park district. So we negotiated with them, and we're going to put the trail in. And then we added 2 lots, which, by the way, are going to have spectacular walkout views because of the slope back there. And we did the other things that Roberta said. They're actually fairly minor changes. And we're looking to add, as Roberta said, a special use for disturbance of the wetlands in order to create the detention basin. To address the gentleman's request for information about the emergency access, we exhausted every effort we could to go through Timberline and to go through Moretti's. And in fact, when you approved this last time, we had represented that we believed that it was going to happen. And we did believe that. I prepared a fairly detailed easement. It was amended a couple of times based on comments we received, and ultimately the owner of the property felt that this might have an adverse impact on his ability to sell his property at some time. He wasn't sure he wanted an easement. We said, geez, all it's going to be is that downslope, so that we could grade it off and the trucks could go down there. But eventually his decision was, after we had presented with him what we thought were the negotiated documents, he said he felt disinclined to do so. So what we proposed is to maintain a strip that was as wide as necessary, create an outlot for it, put the gate there, get it all teed up so that at some time we may be able to get the easement, or they request some kind of zoning relief where they would also need some kind of rearward emergency access. It's all set to be tied in. We are on good terms with the owners, and we're talking to them now about an easement at the end of our property line to grade off the end of it so that, when we mass grade our subdivision, there's going to be a bit of a drop, and we've sent the easement over to him. They're agreeable to it. I don't have the signed copy, but we're communicating well with them. They just had the concerns over whether this would somehow disrupt title to his property, use of his property. He knows that the emergency vehicles would not access the property that often, but as you can imagine, a landowner, you're putting an encumbrance on his property. You always feel like it's harder to sell. But I think in the future, at some point, they're going to probably want to further develop or redevelop that property, and at that point, the village might think that they need an access in the other direction as well, and that would benefit both properties. So that's pretty much the summary.
Let me ask you, you're going to have everything prepared in case it does. Let's say, the owner of that property, doesn't grant it. Is there a way now, after everything goes in and you have everything teed up, and say there was a fire or something that was going on, would the emergency vehicles be able to access through there? Is there enough there, like if they could go over grass if it was necessary?
Yeah, and that's really one of the purposes of our discussions with them about a temporary, just let us do some improvement to your property. We'll clear some trees. We'll fill some of the area in to make a nice smooth transition. I think the bottom line there is without recorded easement authorization, no. Okay. But the reality of their property all the way to that area is parking lot. Not all of it's paved, some of it's gravel when you get to the back. But could a vehicle get from Lake Street through their parking lot and through that gate?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That's my concern. Okay. Thank you.
Just a quick summary. These are fairly minor changes to the plan that was already approved. We're looking for a reapproval of the preliminary plat and the preliminary PUD, as well as a granting of the special use for disturbance of the wetland. And then we would like the recommendation to proceed to the board for final approval. You may have seen the multitude of documents we prepared. We went through, I believe, 3 reviews for final plat, including engineering, landscaping, all those sorts of things. We're ready to present this to the board for final plat approval, assuming you all agree. We have all of our documents in order. We have our declaration ready to record as well, which is being reviewed by the village. Every time that we would respond, staff would give us a 8 or 9 page series of comments, and we would respond, and we went back and forth, and I think we've addressed every single comment either by drawing or response or appropriate document, and therefore we request that you approve our matter and send it on to the board for final. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for the petitioner? No. And at this time, I'll open up to the public. I'd like to remind you that your comments, try and hold them down to about 3 minutes and not bring up the same topic over and over and over again. Once is going to be enough. Jim?
Tom King.
I'm Tom King from 1328 Tamarack. If I may hand this out to each one of you, if you don't mind. One gentleman was kind enough to ask for it the last meeting.
I'll do it.
And what I'm showing you is just to make a point. I'm just a little guy, one small guy on the block with a townhome, and back when maybe there was a different zoning board, there's if you look at the second page, a little breakfast area there. We were not allowed to even have that put on the townhouse because it encroached with the back set to the lot line. Now, that's only like 3 feet. So we sit in that breakfast area with like a 2.5 diameter foot table because of that. So I just want to make that point because the people here are being allowed to encroach 10 feet because the back set was supposed to be 40 feet according to your zoning regulations, and they came in with wanted 20 feet, and you compromised with 30 feet. So that, lots 1 to 11 and 43 to 33 or 32, they said, an average of 8,000 square feet. These lots are high 6,000s and low 7,000 square feet. An acre is 42,000 some square feet. You have a quarter acre lot, you have 4 houses in there. They're nice little size houses. We're talking 6 or 7 houses in an acre. That I can't, I object to it. The price of these homes, they may say they're going to cost so much. People aren't going to buy these little houses for whatever price they came up with. And I'm afraid this gets approved. We're just getting stuck. If the property is not conducive to allow homes you want to build and meet Bartlett's codes, then you come up with something else. You just don't try to cram 10 pounds of you-know-what into a 5-pound bag. All of you are on this board, and you'll have to face us down the road if you let this go in there. I see storage shelters and things being put in the backyards and whatever. We can't do that at our townhouse. There's a statement on your website. I believe the Commission has a lot of living up to this statement. And it says, the ordinance of the Village of Bartlett are designed to protect and promote the public health, safety, morals, comfort, convenience, and general welfare of the people. And if this is approved, I don't think that's happening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Roberta, this entered as Exhibit D. Okay, Jim, next.
Everly Higgins.
I live at 528 Telluride Court. The houses, do they have basements that you're putting in? They do have basements? It's just too dense. I mean, my front door will be facing the back of these houses. And as I look at the plan, I walk out and to me, it's more dense than, we're dense housing, we're condominium townhouses. But I see more green space when I look at the plan in our subdivision than I see in this housing subdivision. And I would like to know how you think this benefits the village of Bartlett. I would just like a few comments on how you, other than tax revenue, how it benefits us. I just don't see it as that it's going to be a quality subdivision. Anything you have to say to me?
But you're qualified to answer that.
Okay, I just think it's just too many houses on too small of lots. And I think part of the reason our subdivision is nice, it's maintained its value, is because we have very strict rules on what we can and cannot do. These people will be able to do. They're going to have a whole lot more leeway because they're individual homes.
Thank you. Jim?
Jacob Bauer.
Yeah, is there?
Let's go through the
Oh, you want to speak?
people who are.
Hi, my name's Jacob Bauer. I live at 1324 Tamarack. I guess I hadn't seen this before in the other hearings, and I hadn't lived there for too long. So, but I guess the first thing that really strikes me is the property line variance, building setback. I struggle to understand why that's being allowed for this. I mean, I understand we touched on before, it's tax revenue, but when I moved in, I had a reasonable expectation that the village building standards would be maintained, and 10 feet's not 3 feet. It's getting closer, so I think was 45 for the back, I think, and it's 35 now. So I saw that they tried to keep the trees in back, and I mean, that was nice, but it's not additional landscape separating it, and anything that the house is closer to ours, the building is closer to our house, the disturbance closer, anything they put in their backyard is closer to ours, they put anything back there. And it doesn't seem like a good precedent to set, and there's variances all over on property setbacks. Possibly a more concerning thing would be that they have not gotten the property for the emergency access, so they're prepared to build this subdivision with one sole entrance and no other access point. Anything happens on Naperville Road or the way in. There's another disturbance on one side of the street that requires emergency vehicles to block the street. That's it. You have no way around it. So we're about to consider approving final engineering for a subdivision with one sole point of access. This doesn't seem like it makes sense to me, and it doesn't seem like a standard that other subdivisions have been held to and other builders have been held to when they develop the property. Then, I guess the last question I had was more of a question to you guys, is when was this anticipated to start, and how long would construction anticipate construction to take? So you guys can address that too as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kofi Miskowitz.
Let's get you.
Hi, we are at 1330 Tamarack Drive, and this is affecting us directly as our backyard faces goes directly to the subdivision. But my question is, when are you guys going to get started with your project? If someone can tell me that. Oh, right now in June? Okay. All right. Thank you.
That's wishful thinking. Susan Terrico. Okay, thank you. Julie Strasser.
Julie Strasser, 1320 Tamarack Drive, and I back up to the south portion of them. When it went before the board, I had requested a larger setback, was granted, went to 35 feet. My concern is for you to be aware of the fact that when Timberline had to access their emergency entrance this year, it was not for emergency vehicles, not police and not fire. It was the only way residents could come in because there was a electric pole over our entrance. If the only emergency exit entrance is by the connection toward Moretti, the residents, if something happens similar to what our subdivision experienced at the entrance on Naperville, the residents cannot get in there. An emergency vehicle, a fire truck, police, they're going to get there. They're going to go over whatever they need to go over, but the residents will not be able to get in. We had to use that emergency access for hours. We had to go through Phillip Drive, out and around, and then come through in order for us to get in or get out. So my point is, whether there's an emergency entrance or not through Moretti's, the residents would not be able to get in. And it's unfortunate that Timberline's board and management completely shut down the connection through Telluride. And now, by putting houses there, you'll never get one. The change to add 2 over by the wetland, if they could maybe take out 2 that align with Timberline, that in the future, if a different board or a different discussion is made with Timberline, but right now it's closed off. You're never going to get somebody to move out and demolish a house just to get access. So I just wanted to make the point that emergency vehicles will get in there. Come hell or high water, they'll come in there, but the residents won't be able to. Thanks.
Thank you.
Josu Cabnow.
Good afternoon. My name is Josue. Thanks for the opportunity. Came in behalf of Bethel Baptist Church. It's part of the north part of the development. We noticed a couple of those trees are dead, and most likely you guys are planning to remove those dead trees. The only concerning the church has is we noticed a couple of those trees are in good standing, good life trees, and we don't know exactly which one of those trees are in the property line. And the question basically the church has is, what about if it's a good tree in the property line? You guys planning to remove it or leave it if it's right there in the property line? So that's pretty much the only question we have.
Thank you.
Michael Hurd.
Hi, I'm from 1134 Pilgrim Parkway, and I apologize if you guys had already answered this, but we live basically right by the detention area, and the big thing with the detention area is what we like about our place is we don't see Moretti's, we can't hear Moretti's, we don't see Lake Street. from what it looked like, you guys might have been leaving some of the trees, but I want to make sure, is there going to still be stuff in the way to block Moretti's and the parking lot and Lake Street? Really, I just had that concern and wanted to ask it, so if you guys are all addressing that later, if you could just answer that, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the
That's all that you have?
petitions I have, yes.
Would the petitioner like to respond to some of those comments?
I think some of them I'll kind of combine into a general statement here that as it relates to density and setbacks, I want to point out that this property was zoned and approved for 87 townhomes. That plan also included a road connection to Telluride, which I believe the timing of that plan approval was such that it was beyond the 2-year window, and likely that connection probably would not have been agreed to or made even at that point, but it was approved for 87 townhomes. Typically when you look at a land plan or a landscape plan or a concept plan for a townhome community, they show the building boxes and everything else is green or various shades of green. I think what is lost in looking at a single-family plan is that it's just assumed that there's just no green space. But what you forget is there is around every single-family home. We're not showing a footprint of a home, but it may not be common area open space like in a townhome community, but every single home has private open space around it that is their yard. So I think it gets lost when you look at a plan like this, that you don't see that common area open space. But the density here is roughly half of what was previously approved. The setbacks that are standard for the community with a rear yard of 25 feet were specifically expanded to 35 to mirror more consistently what we think the setback is of most of those townhome buildings, or what the minimum setback is, or I guess the least setback, the closest setback, or the average for the townhome. So what we've tried to do is not only kind of mirror the same setback as the townhome buildings from the property line on our side, but also expand that setback by 10 feet to allow for more separation between the two. I would personally argue against that because I think that the conditions we typically follow in land planning where we increase setbacks is when you're going from one use to another more intense use. So if this were going from multifamily to commercial or some sort of non-residential use, then greater setbacks are standard, buffering is standard, but we don't see what we're doing here as a downgrade from going from townhome to single family. But nonetheless, along that whole property line with the townhomes, we've expanded to 35 feet to provide more setback. We do have CC&Rs and declarations that will be recorded that staff are reviewing now that will have further restriction with regards to outbuildings and things like that, fence materials, things that could impact adjoining properties. And on top of that, I think what might be more restrictive is your pervious surface area and open space requirements that you have as a village, that everyone will be signing a disclosure that they understand what the maximum coverages are on their lots. And so when it does come time, 10 years from now, and they think, well, I want to put a sport court in my backyard, or I want to pave a big patio that's going to exceed that pervious area, then they're not going to be able to do that. And they've already signed that disclosure that says they recognize that that open space is a requirement here. So I think that's kind of my response to the setbacks, the density, the coverage. With regards to the emergency access, I think we echo some of their concerns. And and we feel we've done everything we can. I think the best alternative would have been to have an interconnection with Telluride. That's not going to happen, so we're dealing with it as best we can. With regards to some of the property line, shared property line questions, where we do have, I would just point out on the north side, we have a church to the west. And then there, where the property juts to the north, where the cul-de-sac is, that's a undeveloped, I think, commercially zoned site. And then to the east of that is Barrington RV, and then Moretti's to the east of that. So what we've done, I think this may have even been the last time we were before you, we were looking at temporary grading easements on essentially all those properties with the exception of the small parcel, commercially zoned parcel. That those agreements didn't come to fruition. So what will be happening along the north property line with the church is a retaining wall. So essentially, I think the question is, what if there's a healthy tree on the property line? The tree survey has been done, and it was very thorough. To the extent that it's on the property line, or it's a shared tree, or it's on their side of the property, nothing would be done to that other than when we mass grade, that area will be cut, and essentially what we'll be doing is root pruning, which is really you're trenching a cut along the property line to prune the roots, that even if a tree is off our property and has roots coming onto our property, those roots will be cut cleanly rather than a machine tearing and pulling. And then there'll be a retaining wall along most of that property line with a fence on top of it, that even though it is a tree line, if anything were to ever change with that tree line on the church's side of the property, or there are any openings in it, there's a fence on top of that retaining wall. And as you go north along the commercial property, Barrington RV, as we said, there's an 8-foot cedar fence wrapping that perimeter property line all the way to the shared east-west property line with Moretti's. So with regards to trees, as Roberta pointed out, we've identified everything we believe can be saved. There's been trees that staff was concerned, even if they could be saved, do we want to save them, and are they just too close to the storm sewer? And we've looked at, as she said, clearing some of those trees and then replacing them with some trees to fill in some of those gaps along the property line. The other question, I think, was from Mr. Hurd. Around that detention area, there is a wetland there. Essentially, the process we've gone through there is to design a wetland detention area, a enhanced wetland bottom detention area. So in some ways, we're kind of replacing the wetland that's there now with a new wetland treatment. We are paying to have that half-acre mitigated off-site as a penalty, I guess. There's a payment requirement in the county. But the pond itself will have a naturalized wetland treatment to it. And then in the landscape plan, there are trees planted around that basin. There are existing trees that will be cleared, but that is the low area, that is the depressional area now, hence the detention pond and the existing wetland. So as far as screening, it won't be the same as what's there today, but once the detention and new enhanced wetland is completed and the new landscaping goes in, I think it'll be equal to what is there today as far as visually looking from what would be the far west side of that outlot to the far northeast side. And I'd also point out, just for Mr. Hurd's benefit, off of our property, so east of the end of the cul-de-sac onto Moretti's property, if you go back there, their parking lot and gravel area of the parking lot goes back far enough that there could be connection to the cul-de-sac, but from that point on, you can see a lot of their property, so this is beyond what we would be working on. A lot of their property has existing tree line on it, and it's, in the spring, summer, fall times, it's a pretty dense hedgerow or tree line there. So that, beyond the edge of what we would be treating with new landscaping, there are some existing trees there that would still be there. I think that addresses all the questions or comments that were raised.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else in the public have a question or comment? Yes.
Is there any off-site, Jake Bauer, 1324, is there any off-site improvements anticipated?
I said hopefully, Jim. Off-site, the only improvements off-site would be to Naperville Road. We have some turn lane tapers, deceleration, acceleration, and is there a left turn in the middle? Yeah. So there will be an improvement along Naperville Road, basically expanding the footprint of what is there. So we're not going to be removing and replacing the whole road, but expansion of what's there to provide for turn lanes, left and right turn. And then to answer your question on the schedule, we're hopeful to start development this summer. I won't pinpoint a date. And we would be completed with our land development, or the bulk of what you would see as land development, the mass grading, undergrounds, roads, by late fall, and starting then vertical construction of the homes. And we think that process then from fall 2016 will probably last through spring, summer of 2019. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no further questions from the public, let's close the public portion. Members of staff, anything?
Hey, Roberta, how wide, or I guess, how deep is lot 48? I can't tell.
It's shallow. It is.
That's right. 48. Where do you get 48? Which one are you talking about, 48?
Yeah, that's still red. See what
It's 10 feet. 10 feet wide.
And is that going to be graded all the way to the property line?
That's
Yes.
Okay.
okay.
And hopefully if we get that easement, the temporary easement, then we would grade beyond our property and make a smooth transition all the way to gravel area on their property.
Okay.
And that's 10 feet from the right-of-way. So we're going to improve everything from the back of curb to the property line. So from back of curb, that might be another 10 or 15 feet. So you'll see essentially a 20, 25-foot approach at the end of that cul-de-sac that would be connected to the property line.
And where's your retaining wall going to be? On the northern
Sorry, what was that?
retaining wall you were talking about?
There's retaining wall along the north and kind of wrapping around the going up north towards the commercial property along the west side of that cul-de-sac. I think it's about 400 lineal feet.
You can see the darker line on here. See that? Right here?
Yeah, there's
And
about
up
400 lineal feet.
Here like this.
Small piece up there.
Right here, yes. See that?
And then around the detention basin where there's a steep uphill slope leading to the east end of the cul-de-sac. And also around, I pointed out that there's going to be a fence along the north property line retaining wall, and then also fencing around the bike path, where the bike path wraps around that retaining wall area on the basin. There'll also be fencing there.
What about putting a fencing in? And I don't know, it sounded like some of the townhouse residents didn't want to see the view of that. What about putting a fence on that southern part? stretching across.
That's where we've got a existing tree line. We're trying to preserve as many trees as possible. We have existing trees that we're going to preserve. We got new trees we're planting. But if we were to do the same type of fence treatment, we'd have to clear everything and run fence right down the property line.
No, the public was closed. No, the public portion was closed.
Is this subdivision governed by an HOA?
Yeah, it will be.
Is there going to be an allotment at all where they can put fences if they want, or how about sheds?
I think that any outbuilding would be dictated by the village code, and also the pervious surface area restrictions. We would typically allow them as long as they're permittable by the village. Fence, I think what we've probably done, what we typically do is we restrict to one or two types of allowable fence, so that we don't end up with a variety of fence.
Right, that's typical.
Yeah.
Well, with the variance short decrease in the lot size, I don't know how practical or probable putting a shed even in the backyard like that would be. You know, these residents are concerned about, backing up to having a shed right, next to their yard. I don't think the variance is shortage that there's even going to be room for that.
There may not be. Within your codes, there may not be.
Are you going to have a requirement for the HOA of what those sheds should look like? Should they be constructed out of the same material and color as the houses that they're being built?
Yes, that's typically like the standard language we use in all of our HOAs. Again, we don't want to completely restrict future homeowners, but we do want it to be in keeping with the community, and we don't want chain link fences. You can put a fence up, but it has to be these two types of fence, so it's not open to interpretation. So 10 years from now, when the board of the HOA is approving these things, it's black and white. It either matches or it doesn't. So.
What's the practice of the village where we have other variances where we shortened and lot setbacks, do we know? Is that common practice? Have we done that?
We've done it in other subdivisions, yes.
Hmm?
We just did it in Bartlett Point West.
Any other questions, comments?
The only comment I have, which I normally do, is the one entrance. It's, I know we've got a couple sites here that have one entrance, but not quite as crowded as this is. I probably went with an approval on the first go around, but I thought about it more and more. And I thought, as was said, something happens on Naperville Road. What happens to all the people in there? Can't get out, can't do anything. You've gone with a longer cul-de-sac than normal. I don't particularly care for the lot size. I think something bigger would be nice, but this is what you laid out. But as far as one entrance, it bothers me. It bothers me a lot. As you say, with the emergency vehicles are going to get in there one way or another. They got to right over a fence, they'll do it to get in. So that doesn't bother me as much. But as far as the one entrance is something that really, really gets to me. And it's a shame that the townhouse area will not allow you to put an entrance into Telluride Court. To give you the double entrance then. May not be used as much, as long as, that we go in and out to Naperville Road. But I mean, it's just, if something happens on Naperville Road, what do these people do? And I have to think of that sitting on this commission, thinking for the village, what do these people do? And if it's tied up for, days, again, what do these people do? I know the piece of property you're trying to develop is unique, I understand it. But I feel something else has to be done. You need another entrance exit.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone else have a comment, question?
Well, is that unique to the village? I mean, aren't there other subdivisions or homes that if there's an emergency, you're blacked?
Yeah, I live in a cul-de-sac. We have 30 units in there, and there's a couple cul-de-sacs in my association that there's just one entrance in, and as far as I know, there hasn't been an issue.
Anything else? No? Okay. Roberta, would you have one motion for A, B, and C, or do you need
It's totally up to you.
combine all three? One,
You
two,
could do
three?
that.
If there's no further questions, then do I have a motion for the Bartlett Ridge A, B, and C amended in special use, along with the subject of the following conditions and the findings of fact?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'll just say, I understand what you're saying, Jer. I understand what your concern is, because I thought about this, which is why I asked about Lot 48. And I think in a dire emergency situation such as you're anticipating, I think that they would be coming through Moretti's property through Lot 48.
But that's just for emergencies. That's not for entrance and exit to the people.
They
If it
can
was
get
an
in.
exit,
Neither is the entrance and exit in the subdivision to the south of
Right.
the Morgan
They have the
one.
same
It's
problem.
it's the same thing. I mean, we could have improved both of these subdivisions if we'd have allowed a connection here, but that's gone. So this is going to be graded off of Moretti's property. There's going to be in a dire situation.
and if it never goes through?
They'll get through. It's such a small area of land. They'll get through.
And it's going to be graded.
It's going to be graded all the way to the property line.
Yeah, but it's still not a street going.
Not a legal one, but it's an emergency.
Well, the emergency is fine.
Even
They're going to go through anything for an emergency. They'll knock down the fence if they have to get in.
I understand.
But the fact is that if something happens on Naperville Road
Right.
for 3 days, what do these people do for 3 days?
That's what I'm talking about.
They're going to open the gate.
Open that gate up and they're going to go through.
Is that a possibility?
Happen 3 days?
When is the point? When?
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't following your question. Is that a possibility? I was saying yes. I mean that you may not want to take your Jaguar sedan through there, but yeah, I mean, I think my neighbors would come to me and say, can I take your Expedition out the emergency access? Because
No.
but that connection is possible would be possible for vehicles without being emergency or village vehicles. But the connection itself or that permanent easement, I don't know. That's up to that
The
property.
fact is, will Moretti's allow traffic in and out of there in case Naperville Road is closed? They don't want the emergency exit.
They don't want an
What are
easement
they going to do
encumbering their
when
property.
somebody, when something happens to let the people in and out of there?
If it was me in an emergency and I'm getting my family in and out of there, they'd have to blockade their entire parking lot to keep me from going in and out. But could they do that? I guess they could. It's private property, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So in essence, you have one exit, one entrance.
Yes.
Possibility, if they allow it, and it's graded, so actual traffic can go in and out in case of emergency. I'm not saying, fire, police, no.
Yeah.
I'm saying the people that live there, they have access in and out of there.
By right of way, by easement, no.
Let's just hope it's a short-lived, whatever exit or whatever, thing might happen, that it's short-term. I mean, I understand what you're saying, that we want to know what our alternative is if there's an emergency, but let's hope it's not days. I mean, I don't know if we've ever had something like that in the village.
It would definitely be an inconvenience for the homeowners.
We've had flooding in the village and
It sure
residents have
would.
been trapped.
And if it was, 3-4 days a week.
But I would think that the people, when they buy their home, they're going to be, look, hey, well, I guess if this gets blocked, there's a possibility that this could happen.
People don't think that way.
Yeah, they don't.
People don't think that way. I'm sorry.
All right, we have
I mean, you
second.
may think
Any
that
further
way,
discussion?
and you look at it, the rest of the people, they're buying a house, they even enter their mind.
Okay.
And you can vote that way, yep.
Will the secretary call the roll?
Harry Callis,
No.
Tim Ridenhour,
Yes.
John Miasso,
Yes.
Diane Nagel,
Yes.
Shane Cook,
Yes.
Austin Hopkins.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Motion carried. All right, thank you.
I hope you understand what I'm going at.
Okay. Thank you. Good luck. Okay. Next item on our agenda is old business, new business.
In terms of old business, new business, I think,
Wait until they clear out.
Yeah.
The gavel.
The meeting is still going on, please, quietly.
So I didn't know that.
I look at it as something that can happen.
Even she's a NIMBY.
That's the problem. It's a dead end.
I realize that.
Jerry, so I was in Arizona and I had a police activity.
Pardon?
I was in Arizona, it was the American police activity. We weren't allowed to leave for 5 hours, not even our units.
Oh, Lord.
So it can happen.
Oh, yeah.
You just hope it's not a long thing. So I wanted to know that.
I have to put the devil's advocate. There's no way.
All right.
I mean, it's just.
Okay,
in terms of old business, new business, what you have in front of you is kind of both, because we had one of our village trustees made a motion, and the village board recommended and followed through that the commissioners should all get recognized for their years of service. And as what you have in front of you in your various packets, Diane and Roberta did all this. They gave you the mugs and the candy, and then there's certificates as well as, and some of you who have longer service, there's a gift card in there, and there's either a gift card and goes down to a pen. So there's something to strive for. If you've gotten a pen, you get a pen.
One more year.
The board wants to do recommended. So we've done it with the zoning board, economic development commission, and you haven't had a meeting for a while. So this is your recognition from the board and well as from the staff, and we thank you for your service and your years of hard and diligent work on this committee. And that's kind of old business.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you.
Send the village
Very
board
nice.
a good thank you from us.
We will do that. So, and I think in terms of new business, there may be a meeting next month. There's a couple of projects. Depends on how they'll get through the system, but there's a couple of industrial buildings that you may or may not see. So if it's not in May, certainly in June, we'll have a meeting.
Okay.
In the court, the business,
We're actually getting buildings in both the Brewster Creek, and you're going to see the first one in the Blue Heron Business Park, the one out on Route 25. That one's come in, so you'll see one of those too.
What county is that in? Is that in Kane?
That's in Kane County, yeah. Right close to where you saw the Bartlett Point West subdivisions on the south side. This is on the north side. So there's some buildings built out there that in certain areas they had a pre-approved site plan, but then there's one coming in that's right on Route 25 that's subject to the normal site plan review process that you'll see.
What's the current progress on Bartlett's wedding chapel?
Roberta can answer that.
They have not officially submitted.
They have not. Okay.
I am thinking next week.
Okay.
You'll see that in the summer.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Yes, a long meeting, very long.
There's some people objecting to it already.
We've had objectors before we even have a plan.
oh, are you kidding me?
Where is it?
Anyone else have anything? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
No?
Thank you.